Hey everybody, what's going on? It's Mac here. Welcome back to another new video. Today we're going to be taking a look at the Mac setup script again. So this is probably going to be the last video in this series, and as a result it's probably going to be the most dense and also maybe kind of pointless to a lot of people. So if it's something that you're interested in checking out, I would definitely recommend that you check out the playlist that I've made available on YouTube. You don't really need to check out these first two videos, but at least probably the last two or three I would check out, and maybe that'll give you some context and so the video won't seem so odd or weird or whatever. So what we're doing today is I'm trying to incorporate all of my dot files into this same install script. If we were to exit Vim and just list all of the files in a directory, a lot of these files are these hidden files that have a dot in front of them, and the ones that aren't directories are just files that store preferences for applications. Emacs and Vim both use these. Mutt, the kind of command line email app, uses these. I think HTOP may have a dot file somewhere. So it's kind of a good idea to be able to, one, know how to edit these files, but also by extension incorporate these into my script, or at least I thought so. So the plan is to open up my Z profile, and this is just the dot file that controls Z shell, which is the shell that I like to use. And then I'll also open up my vimrc, and we'll just incorporate both of these preference files into the script. So let's go ahead and get started. I'm going to open up the install script here. This is just an abbreviated version for us to work with. And then I'll also open up, I guess we'll just do a new tab. I'll open up my .z profile file. And these are just a few lines of code that will run in front of the command prompt whenever I open up a new shell. And this isn't by any means like a complicated Z profile or anything. It's nothing fancy. I honestly just made it just for this video, but you can see here we have a few lines of code. Mainly, I'm using a custom Fortune database to display a little quote, and then I just list the uptime and the date for my system. Now, the way that this is going to work is we're going to use a program called Echo, which usually, if we just run, we'll just print a file onto the desktop, or print a file onto the command line. But what we can actually do with this program, if we give it an input, so let's say like hi, we can actually use it to append text to a file by using these two greater than signs. So if we create a new file, let's say on the desktop called test.txt, run this program, what we should have is a file with some text that ideally should say exactly what we want it to. Now, the interesting thing about Echo is that when we append more than one piece of text to a file, it'll actually just constantly print on a new line. So in theory, we could make a document with, basically no real limit in terms of size. So that's what we're going to try to do here. So I'm just going to open up that Z profile again, and we'll just try to recreate this in our script really quickly. So I have a spot down here for us. I'm just going to open up a new line here. I'm going to do echo, open the quotes so that we have somewhere to write, and then I'll append this to a file. And usually when you're writing something in a script like this, I found that I always get the best results, but just by being very specific in terms of the directory. Assuming that I'm in the home directory, which is where this script is, I could just write .z profile, and it will be writing to that .z profile file. But what I like to do is just make sure that I'm always in the home directory, so that's just ~/ and then .z profile, and this will be how we append lines to this text. So I'm just going to make a couple of copies here. We'll come right in here, and let's see. We're going to do first line, we're going to use Fortune, hook that up to a custom database. We're going to pipe that through Cowsay, and then give it the dragon animation. If this doesn't make sense, it's not really all that relevant. Then we'll do the uptime command, and then we'll also do the current date. And we can write those changes. Now, if you're interested in what this looks like in practice, if I just open up iTerm here, and we'll clear it. This is kind of what we get. It's just going to display a quote with this interesting art, and then it's going to display the uptime and the date. So it's not really anything complicated. It just, kind of makes the shell your own. And now we would want to move on to our vimrc file. Now this file is a bit more complex because we actually have some plugins that we want to install. Now I use vimplug as a plugin manager, and the only issue that we're going to run into there is that vimplug actually requires that you open Vim and then run plug install to install any plugins that you want to install. Now there's a few ways around this. You could manually install plugins. There's a whole bunch of different ways that you could maybe figure out a way to avoid this problem. But what we're going to do is we're going to install the plugins, open Vim, and then just keep running the script. First thing that we actually need to do is actually install the plugin manager that we use, Vim Plug, which is just one line of code, which we can just paste in really quickly. And then what I'll do is I'll do that echo trick again, and this time we're going to be appending files to our .vimrc file, and it's just going to be this chunk right here, the plug start, the plug end, and then all of the actual plugins that we want to use. So now that we have this set up, it's just going to print these lines of code right into the top of our vimrc. We can then open up Vim, in which, we just type Vim right into the script. It will open Vim. We can then run the plug install, and then whenever we quit Vim, it'll go right back to our script. And now we could go ahead and set up any of the other things that we wanted in our vimrc. So I'm just going to add a few things here. If we take a look here, you can see towards the top of the list, we have a whole bunch of just kind of normal commands, normal settings, the kind of things that most people would have in their vimrc somewhere. So I'm going to do, we'll see, we'll do set background equal to dark, and then I'll do set color scheme grovbox. And this is actually part of the reason why you need to install plugins before you actually finish running your vimrc, is because some of these things, like this color scheme, for example, grovbox, is installed as a plugin. So I can't reference that color scheme in my vimrc if the plugin isn't even installed, which sounds weird. There's also stuff that's like setting a custom key binding for a plugin. For example, NerdTree is a good one that has a custom key binding. It just makes sense to me, at least, to install all of the plugins and then go ahead and do all of our changes to the vimrc. That way, we're never going to get an issue at any point in the process. If we're doing other stuff while we're installing the script or something, we won't run into any kind of issue. And then I might do something like, we'll just say set number relative, and then, I don't know, there's a bunch of other stuff we add. It's not really important that we add everything. It's just important that everyone knows what's going on. So the final thing that I want to do is I want to set zshell as my default shell, and then install omyzsh, which luckily if you go to the omyzsh GitHub repository, you can find one line of code that should do both for you. It just does require user input. You have to, I think, hit yes and then enter a password. So it's not that big of a deal, but something to know. And actually, let's make sure we put this in the right place. I wanted to put this below this, and then that, and then that. Okay, cool. That's actually it for this video. I hope you've enjoyed it. If you're interested in following this project, which, I don't know, I guess some people might be, my repository is actually public on GitHub. There'll be a link in the description, and you can see all of the most recent changes that I've made to the script at any point in time. So it's in an environment that's not like abbreviated and kind of built to be simple to understand like the video, but it's much more detailed. So I might check that out. But that is all for this video. I will see you in the next one.